Hello and welcome to jQuery for Designers. This is a screencast to demonstrate how to create the coda pop-up bubbles, the bubble pop-ups that kind of puff into view and puff out of view. So let me just show you what I mean. Coda is the new one-window web development tool produced by Panic, and on their page they've got these buttons, and when you put your mouse over the download, this nice little effect comes up, shows you how big the file is, and just has some general information. So it's good for kind of information snippets of text. When I mouse away, it kind of just fades out of view. So we're going to recreate this effect using jQuery. Here's my sample set up. I've got some HTML set up as well. I've used their images just to show you how it would work. Your information block can be anything. In this example, the Panic developers have used a table, so I've literally just taken it and plugged it into my code. So this is what it looks like at the moment. There's no JavaScript in there, so nothing happens. So this is what it should look like when no JavaScript's on there, and this would actually be a link, and I could download the product. The table that I've taken from the Coda website looks like this. And we've got a class of pop-up. I've wrapped the whole thing in this this div bubble info. So we've got our image, a class of trigger, and we've got our table with class of pop-up. It can be anything, it can be a div, it can be a span, whatever you want. And up here is our style sheet. Now, pretty much everything from here downward is specific to the Coda website to just make it look right, to make it kind of have the bubble visual effect. So your code may not have that, or it may have that, or whatever. This is the important code to create the effect. So we need position relative on the bubble info, the thing that wraps both our table and our image. So this class here has got position relative, and the trigger doesn't actually need position relative, so let's get rid of. No, I've used sorry. Yeah, I don't need that. The pop-up has got position absolute because we're going to position the pop-up relative to this image here rather than relative to the page. So we know that this point here where we want it to appear will be X pixels to the left and X pixels to the top. We've got a high Z index, so it appears over everything. So if we actually move this image a little bit higher up, we would want the pop-up to appear above this bubble or whatever other elements you'd have on there. To start off with, we've got display none and opacity to 0, but the minimum you want is display none because you don't want it to actually appear if the JavaScript's disabled. The opacity and the opacity and display settings will reset every time we go to make the pop-up appear. So let's crack on with our JavaScript. So let's import jQuery. I don't think that's a path. So this is when our DOM is ready, and I'm going to do .bubbleinfo.each, which sets me up for a plugin later on, because then I can just, if I wanted, in my plugin I just do return this.each. But you'll be able to find tutorials on that on the internet and elsewhere. Right, to create my effect I need a few things to track what's going on. So the variables in this are the distance it's going to move, so I'm going to move it 10 pixels, the time it takes to create the effect, so 1/4 of a second, so that's 1/4 of a second, and the time between it showing and me moving my mouse away and the whole bubble just disappearing, so I'm going to make this 1/2 second. I need a high delay timer, which I'll explain later on. and I'm going to capture the trigger element. I'm using this as a context, so the second variable passed into the dollar function tells us to look for an element with the class trigger within the context of this, and this is our bubble info. So we're saying within this block here, find the element that has a trigger class, which is our image. And pop up, same thing, this. And if we wanted, we could set our opacity here if we wanted to have valid CSS, but we're not going to. Right, we need a mouse over effect, mouse over event, and we're going to have a mouse out event, and we need to hook these to both the trigger and the pop-up. And the right syntax for that isn't comma separated like I've done there. I need to put it in an array and get the actual element. So get, since they're completely separate elements. I mean, I could do the first children of bubble info, but I just want to specify those elements that I'm interested in. I'm sure there's different ways of doing this, and syntax for this could be like that, but that's how I'm doing it for this one. Right, so mouse over. And mouse out. I'm just going to do a console.log to make sure I've got the mouse over event. Yep. Okay, that's fine. So we've got a scroll bar here. Why have we got that? That's strange. There's a width. Oh, it's because isn't it position relative or something? Yeah. I'm just going to set a width on that to get rid of my scroll bar. Okay, so back to our mouse over event. What we're going to try and achieve here is our pop-up. We're going to change its CSS. Remember, it's got an opacity of 0 and it's display none. So we're going to change it to, we're going to leave the opacity at 0. I'm going to add in display block. We need to position it. For the moment, I'm just going to put top minus 100 and left 40. So when my mouse goes over, it should actually appear, the pop-up will appear and it'll appear in a certain position, so that didn't work because our opacity is still off. I'm just adding the opacity just for to see where it's appearing. Right, so the left is too far over to the left for what I want to do, so I'm just going to bring the left over. Take note, minus 32 pixels. Okay, that's 32. Cool. So that's where I want my pop-up to appear. I'm going to get rid of the opacity because we're going to use animate to get the opacity to move. So opacity 1. So there's our fade up effect. But you'll remember in the actual coda website, what's happening is it's kind of fading upwards, and then as our mouse goes away, it fades upwards again to create this kind of puff effect. So we want that as well. So I'm going to move it top minus equals. So we're going to move it negatively along its y-axis. So it's going to move upwards, and I'm going to use this distance. So if you see, because when I put my mouse back over again, it resets its position. So when we mouse out, it'll puff up more, and and when we mouse back in again, we don't want it to kind of keep going higher and higher and higher as it is there. But that's because the the jQuery is not finished. Right, so going back, what you're seeing there is the effect keeps getting called. So I need to say if the effect is being shown, then return. Else, we want the code to run. And we just say being shown equals true, and let's create this local variable. So now what I say is, if it's being shown, don't bother reanimating it, and for the first time that we animate it, set being shown to true and start animating it. So you see, as I keep putting my mouse over, nothing more happens. But when we hide it, we do want to reset this being shown flag. So on mouse out, being shown equals false. You can see it. Well, right. Sorry. Let me finish the code before I get too excited. When the animation is finished, I need to call a function to set being shown to false, because it's no longer being shown, but it is visible. So it's visible, true. And I'm going to say if it's already visible, don't bother trying to set the. Don't try and bother doing the effect. So we said it's no longer being shown, but it is visible. So, and in this code, we say if it's visible, then we return don't do the effect. And on mouse out, we want to do the opposite. So we'll do pop up dot animate top, and because we're going to puff it up and then puff it away upwards, we're still doing the minus equals, and opacity goes down to 0. Yeah, and we want to say visible equals equal to false because it's no longer visible. So let's have a look at that. Put a mouse in, stays there. Mouse out, goes away. So that's the effect, except we've got this problem here. Put my mouse in, put it over, it goes away. That's our bug. To get around this, we're going to use this hide delay timer. I'm going to say if hide delay timer, clear the timeout. And I'm going to do hide delay timer equals set timeout we've got a time on there? Hide delay, yeah. Hide delay. So here we've said if our mouse goes out, fire this function, the animation, after half a second, which is fine, but it doesn't fix our problem yet. So if my mouse goes out and comes back, it shouldn't be. Put the hide delay up to a second. What we need to do is clear cancel this request to hide the actual pop-up, and we do that in the mouse over. So we copy this clear timer, whenever we mouse over, we always clear our timer. So if I refresh, now I can mouse over this info block and it doesn't go away. Take mouse away, and after half a second or a second, it goes away. 1. There you go. Let's bring that down to half a second. So my mouse can travel around these two areas without any problem. It can come out of the block briefly, but if I come out entirely, it floats away. So I've skimmed through that code fairly quickly. The code is on the website, jqueryfordesigners.com, with comments throughout it to explain why we're using these trackers. But the most important part is this block in the mouse over, because we need to make sure that the effect of clearing the pop-up doesn't fire even though we're moving from the trigger to the pop-up. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this screencast, as brief and quick as it might have been. If you've got any feedback, just drop us a comment on the blog post. Alright, thanks a lot.